Alors, le titre Faire de la cybersécurité un argument marketing et commercial. Donc, la cybersécurité est de moins en moins considérée comme un coût, mais de plus en plus évaluée dans une option de retour sur investissement, alors que de plus en plus de cyber due diligence sont opérées avant une fusion-acquisition. La prise de participation d'un fonds de private equity et la soumission à une cyberassurance, le recours à des outils de cyber-rating devient un élément prépondérant dans la valorisation d'une entreprise et dans le calcul de primes d'assurance. La cybersécurité devient par ailleurs fondamentale pour la notoriété, l'image de marque et le Net Promoter Score Global de l'entreprise. La hausse de la propension d'achat d'un véhicule et de l'utilisation des services d'une banque est par exemple corrélée avec la croissance de sa protection contre les cyberrisques. Alors, cette discussion va être menée par Hervé Lejouan, qui est partenaire de risque cybersécurité et sécurité de l'information chez Seven Train Ventures. Donc, Hervé est entrepreneur passionné et un leader reconnu dans les nouvelles technologies depuis les années 90. Il possède un mélange unique de compétences technologiques, commerciales et de gestion. Depuis, il a rejoint et cofondé ou fondé des entreprises ou organisations pour lancer et conduire les innovations des marchés à travers le monde dans divers secteurs tels que l'intelligence artificielle, la fintech, l'informatique et le numérique. Alice Fournier est directrice des systèmes d'information pour les Amériques chez ISS, un leader mondial de l'expérience en milieu de travail et de la gestion des installations. Elle est chargée de développer et de mettre en œuvre les stratégies informatiques et de numérisation dans toute la région Amérique de l'entreprise pour aider cette dernière à naviguer vers un leadership technologique au sein du secteur de la gestion intégrée des installations. Et finalement, Federico Salviti est associé chez Seven Train Ventures. Il se décrit comme un faiseur de marché et un couteau suisse de la croissance. Federico est associé d'exploitation chez Seven Train Ventures où il dirige les efforts du portefeuille d'entreprise SaaS dans les domaines de l'hyperautomatisation, de l'intelligence artificielle et de la cybersécurité. Et si vous voyez l'affiche ici, il devait y avoir un autre participant au départ, mais il ne sera pas avec nous cet après-midi. Alors, je vous laisse la parole, vous pouvez débuter. Merci.
Thank you. So thank you very much to sit with us. It's going to be much more a conversation today because we want it to be very interactive, the three of us. And so let me start with a few points. And obviously, you know, today we are living in a world where digital threat is just increasing and it's just going, and it's just the beginning. So meaning that if you think about 5G and 6G networks coming on, all the objects tomorrow are going to be connected and interconnected and connected worldwide at scale. So it's going to be a new world. Also regulations. Of course, we have started with the GPD and GDPR in Europe, but we are moving now to a lot of places with kind of GDPR regulation. So regulation is there to tell company you need to be careful with users' data. And so these are the kind of things. But then, if you put yourself in the foot of a consumer, what is marketing? So now, what is marketing? The consumer sees marketing as a kind of social, targeted advertising, email campaigns, the kind of thing where he's feeling that he is now the product. So and with the increasing of data breaches in the last, let's say, 2 to 5 years, consumers have started to be concerned by the usage of their data. And certainly the marketeers, let's say in the past 10 years, they were just using all the data they could use, making partnerships with all the big companies and crunching the data everywhere. But now they need to be careful. And therefore, in somewhere, they need to go and talk to CISOs, technology people, in order to make sure that, one, they feel the regulation, of course, and what they need to do, but as well, they get consumers and their client should be happy. So having said that, now there is the one thing that is very important is that in some way, CMOs, chief marketing officers, and CISOs are different personae. And I want Federico, actually, who has a great experience in marketing, and is a professor as well in some university, to tell us about those type of, let's say, those differences and what he sees as a kind of challenges.
Good afternoon, everybody, first of all. The main challenge that I see is, first of all, towards the personality. Marketers are people that decide to get into marketing because they feel that their creative element, their creative part, should be made available to benefit of the organization, to sell a product. Their creativity speaks a lot, and it's very present in their behavior. And all of a sudden, about probably 15 years ago, technology started to creep into their creative minds. Up until 15 years ago, a CMO would simply decide where to invest advertising money, where to do the creative, and all of a sudden, there was a lot of work to decide where the budgets would go, and that was pretty much it. The rest was internal meetings, our sales going, these kind of things. Now, all of a sudden, 15 years ago, technology comes into place. And people start thinking, oh my God, okay, I'm gonna have to report results here. How do I do that? I have no idea. And so that's how our world started rocking a little bit, because we were asked by the CFO to report on specific pieces of data, to report on which channels are working more than others, which is not something that we were necessarily comfortable with at the very beginning. We started getting used to this thing called cookies. And now they're just taking them away right now. And so all this work to get used to something, and then they take that away from us. And now we have to get used to primary data. When I hear the word primary data, I see a server and I see a primitive man with a stick.
With a barrier, yeah.
That's what I see. So it is a world in which a creative mind is trying to adapt with a type of narrative that has a different mindset, a different structure. And so I think that having worked with many CIOs in the past, many CISOs in the past, being a chief marketing officer myself over and over, I can tell you that the biggest gap is in the feelings side of things, in how we feel about things, in how we structure our mind around things. And there is another element that I would like to say about chief marketing officers. We are the only ones that have to deal truly with consumers' behaviors out there that go in every single direction, and nothing depends on us. So we are the ones that have to go give a forecast out, and we have no idea if we're guessing or what. So the CIO and the CFO or the CISO, to an extent, have some level of internal control to how their divisions are run and predictability of how certain projects will likely go. Marketing, good luck. So, you know, throw us a bone.
Yeah.
Well,
Interesting, but I would like to get your view, because you have been, Alice, you have been into this journey of digital transformation, and I think you have seen how technology in some way impacted marketers, and whether they feel it was okay or not.
Yeah, you know, absolutely, and I think one expression that really ties to what you were discussing, right? In marketing, we often used to say, and still unfortunately kind of do, say that I know half of my investment works, I just don't know which half. And so that's the bottom line when it comes to marketers, right? But I'm comfortable with the ambiguity because I have this great creative mind, and I know that the half that is working really well because I'm building brands, I'm entering new markets, I'm creating new products. And so that's the marketing mind that technology came to. And so to your point, my background is indeed technology, IT, and marketing. And what I saw happen suddenly is that for our marketers, to your point, that we were suddenly being asked, okay, well, now you probably should know which of the halves actually works. Tell us which one, because data was there to make that call for us. But what people who had these expectations didn't realize is that for marketers to understand data was critically challenging, largely because it felt very foreign, right? I'm comfortable with creative sessions, with brainstormings, with reflecting deeply, understanding the consumer, and yet that consumer was moving, and to this day is moving very quickly. So, you know, it's not that long ago that I had a really great MySpace account, and I loved it. And now, you know, think about the journey consumers, and I would guess many of many of you in the room have children, teenagers. You know, we went from Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and that journey is moving quickly. Now, if you position yourself within the business, the marketer is tasked with not only creating content for these platforms that engage with consumers very differently, very quickly, but they're also tasked with understanding the data behind those platforms. And that element is critically important, because that consumer on these platforms does not want to hear from a big brand. And I'm sure, again, I'm talking to the consumers in each one of you who probably are on one or many of these platforms. When you see bad brand advertising, it's really not great. But usually the source of that advertising that's just not connecting with you is a marketer that's really struggling to understand data.
Very true.
Yeah, and data, and I would add that data in some way back to now, the kind of CMO-CISO relationship, that in some way the approach is that CMO, they want to use now the data, and they have this source of data from anywhere, and now AI is coming so that they can target and so on. And on the other side, you have a CISO view, which is, okay, there are regulations, there are all those things that I need to comply with, and I need to be very careful. So now they are coming to some solutions around data encryption and things like that, which is going to reduce, in some way, some capacity of the CMO to do the work. So, and basically, then we enter in a new world where, again, cookieless and things like that, where we have never been in a better position, let's say, to use and to crunch the data through every single platform that can do. And on the other side, we are facing consumers and regulators and so on who say, hey, you need to be careful. So basically, in this world of hyper, let's say, personalization, we are moving in somewhere where hyper-personalization, but back to your point, but it has to be very much well done, otherwise the consumer is going to be killing you. So,
very much so. I like how the meaning of the word data is completely different to you as it is to me as a chief marketing officer. The word data to me is those pieces of breadcrumbs that a user leaves onto a web page, onto an app that they're using on their phone. Like I can see people right now, you're buying something on Amazon. I can see some people on their mobile phones. You see what I mean? Thank you for participating, by the way. All those little breadcrumbs, they are the pieces of data that I am looking for. All these pieces of data are created because someone has decided to interact to a piece of content that we have created that, guess what, ends up being interesting, enticing. They decide to perhaps maybe buy. But do they? Because how many times have you found yourself not completing a purchase on your cart? We refer to internally as moments of truth. These are those little moments in which, from a marketing perspective, something goes north, something goes south. Completely. So the meaning of the word data, it's kind of scary to a creative mind because it implies math. And I don't mean to be Freudian right now and say, it has to do with your third grade math teacher. But there is a sense of anxiety when it comes to dealing with data. I find it a little bit ironic because in an ideal world, as a chief marketing officer, I wish I had a relationship with the CISO where I could simply go to the CISO and say, buddy, this is my user experience, customer journey that I just created. These are my key performance indicators. I understand that I need to be driving on this highway that I have built. I need to be driving your car. So you need to give me here some environment where I can deploy the apps that I want, the customer experience that I want, the integrations that I want, but you have to give me the environment because I am not risking having to justify myself with the compliance officer. So,
and in some way, in the digital transformation, we have been through this kind of relationship with the UX and the CMO and so on. So we have had to do that, but now we need to move and to include the CISO in that relationship. So basically, the UX and the UX leaders in company, it's very much important in terms of the way you engage with your clients. The UX is very much important. But as well, the UX has an impact on the kind of cybersecurity and data. Because if you think about remember this word, frictionless. So basically, everyone is very happy with frictionless. But what does it mean behind the scene? Is that your data, your identity is somewhere. So basically, we are very happy with a frictionless world so that we can buy very quickly, we can pass very quickly, everything. But on the other side, there is a danger there. The danger is that my data is there. Maybe I did not really consent to give that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, and now I'll put my CIO hat on, but this is where understanding the kinds of platforms that marketers are connecting your systems to is imperative. Because marketers, right, successful marketers need to interact, to connect. They have multiple creative agencies, multiple sources of data. If you're global companies, these sources of data come from, every country with different regulations. And marketers who are such great connectors quickly connect. And so what you can see happen in many cases, and I'll take the creative agency side because I again, wearing the marketing and the CIO hat was a challenge to look at how agencies do that. But what you're going to see oftentimes is that creative agencies will actually plug in right into your data sources, will open connections, through some of the platforms that are out there between the agency and the internal data place for frictionless. Right, because the marketer wants to meet that consumer in the best possible way, and that way is quick, it's easy, it's personalized. And in order to do that, and because oftentimes internally in the business, marketers are still on the learning journey of data and creating data-driven content, they empower agencies to get really close to the data. With my CIO hat on, this means that I have many, many agencies who are plugged into many corporations, often handling data in the best possible ways they can, but it is critically important for CIOs to ask the right questions of these agencies, not to come, and CISOs of course as well, not to come as a naysayer and as somebody who wants to prevent, but really to together create a frictionless world that's also secure.
yeah, I think, and it's very important and interesting that you're putting the point on the agencies, because we have lived in that world where companies and CMOs, they have pushed in some way the kind of marketing to the agencies. And the agencies, they found, okay, well, how do I move from where I was 15 years ago with now all that technology and this data that I can take on? And the fact is that it has disconnected in somewhere the technology, and I mean the CISO side, from these agencies who have done things which were, let's say, borderline, if I can say that like that. As a CISO point of view, you may think that, wow, if you would know what those guys are doing with some data, you would think, no, I don't want you to do that. But you didn't know. So now again, the agencies, they need to be in the loop in order to make sure, and the loop of the CMO, but the CISO as well, because they will have to fulfill, and we're coming back to the third-party management, and making sure what they are doing is, again, making sure that it's going to be for the security of the client, the data protection, and so on. So I think this is very important as a data point.
As if you were not anxious enough about the fact that you cannot control things internally, now you also have agencies that you have to deal with. So thank you for just making us feel comfortable about that concept. I understand. You see, this is an actual difference that is already emerging from this conversation. I am focused on looking on the outside world and convince people to come through the door by give me their data so that I have primary data that I can just use. You see what I'm saying? Because I have the privilege to be able to use it because you've done that transaction with me. You also manage another point, the identity element. If I own the primary data, I am partially interested what your actual identity is because I've associated yourself with a unique ID number. And your personality is really your previous behaviors become your personality. And so I can kind of use machine learning and artificial intelligence to utilize models to understand it. So you have a very inward security perspective that has to match with an outward user journey kind of mentality, I think.
Well, and that's, I think, a great intersection. So in thinking, because really what needs to happen, right, is for CMOs, CIOs, CISOs to be engaged together and to collaborate, to understand each other. And I always find that, you know, when you find a good intersection, a good starting point, that helps cement healthy collaboration. And I think you've just hit on a very, very good point. Technologies to leverage the data, right? Because there's the floodgates of data were open, are still pretty much open, right? I would argue as far as consumer data, with a lot of restrictions, but there's a lot of it available in different formats or varieties. But the bottom line is the tools are evolving really quickly. And in the CIOs and the CISOs network, either internally within the business or outside, you have a lot of people who know how to leverage these tools in much better ways than many marketers would. And so as I think about what is a great intersection point with my CMO, is to actually look at together, how do I take some of my IT, some of my tech people, and help them upskill marketers? And that way you start to create these bridges where marketers deeply need the tech knowledge. They don't generally have it. Go ahead.
So it's basically in governance and training you are using.
Absolutely.
So the bedrock of,
Yep.
of digital transformation, basically.
Yeah.
But then it's back to the responsibility of the COMEX, because at the end of the day, those two personnel, they are reporting to either the executive committee, chief operating officer, and then you need to make sure that you are going to tell them that they need to engage, they need to have some principles of engagement, they need to have some rules of engagement. Otherwise, if you just let them go, and say, the CMO, do your job of getting the consumers and the revenue, and CISO, get your job of doing the security, then you're going to fail, because they're not going to talk to each other. So I think, you know, it's important as well that the organization overall is taking that as a kind of a must-have in terms of principle and way to do it, instead of just saying, okay, you do that, and then do your job. So I think there is a need for changing, because the market is looking for that. Consumers are looking for, again, more responsible companies in terms of managing their data. Again, we're coming back to the consumers, but if today data bridges are there, and so many data bridges, you don't want your data to be out there on the dark market and then on the press saying, oh, you know, it has been released, you know, your credit card number and so on. So you don't want that. So that's why it's just not only, let's say, a task by each function, but really working together on a regular basis, defining KPIs and so on.
Oh yeah, well I think it's a lot of governance around digital transformation, right? And we haven't been in this wonderful space for a long time. Digital transformation first was, of course, you know, let's go after the consumer. The consumer has new expectations, we need to go, and we need to digitize internally, and then e-commerce and digital marketing and COVID and all of these things that have evolved very, very quickly. Now, I do think that the way forward, as we really start to look at our investment, is about a very, very clear understanding of what is it that we're going to transform digitally. And now I'm thinking more from a sales and marketing and a business standpoint to give the right governance around that digital transformation. So where are we headed? Clear governance so that these boundaries really free the right internal actors to work together around these core digital transformation aspects. Because I think what has tended to happen is you've had a lot of really worthy digital transformation that were really more, you know, pilots around a key idea, and all of this is very, very worthwhile, but it has created a lot of instances where CMOs have been off on their own, you know, doing tech stuff and data stuff, creating, you know, new vulnerability, new surface vulnerability for the corporation. Whereas going forward, I would argue, we'll see a lot more of that clear governance on where our corporation's digital transformation is headed.
If I can bring an example from real life, and this I've actually seen this over and over again by way of creating a deputy. So, Chief Marketing Officer, of course, needs to be in charge of the entire ecosystem, of the entire, let's say, machine.
Of marketing.
Of marketing, right. However, is managing up, sideways, and down, right? Cybersecurity has an element, but security in general, has an element of specificity that requires knowledge stratification over time. It's not something that you can learn in a 6 weeks course online with Coursera. You have to live it and breathe it. You have to have the scars a little bit. So now it's all making sense to me with the point that you were bringing. To create a deputy within the marketing, within the marketing team that is deputy to control the security made me think in the split second that you were talking, who would I choose in my own company right now? Right now, I would actually choose the person that manages our UX. Why? Because ultimately, he's the guy, or actually, in this specific case, he's a guy. He is the person that that reports to me every single possible moment of truth, every single possible contact point that is happening in the user journey. And that's my gateway to put whatever security element needs to be done. So I would want that person to be my
but on the other side, maybe you would want as well the equivalent on the CISO side, which is more the kind of marketing oriented, knowing the technology, because as you mentioned, the technology.
Basically having the same person.
Yeah, because the complexity of cybersecurity, we all know is there. So basically, it's you don't do that in 6 weeks, of course. But if you have on the cybersecurity side someone that is as well a bit more business and marketing oriented, then you're going to be able to engage with the marketeers and make them understand that, you can do things, but and again, this is something that needs to be put in place in companies in order in governance and way of managing. So this is about maybe new type of jobs, new type of people that needs to be filling a gap between certain responsibilities.
Yeah, I really love this idea, and I do think it's a great entry keyword, right, to say, let's look at the consumer journey. I think I really love where you're going with this, where that's a great way to position, because that will resonate with marketers, right? Marketers will know exactly what you're looking for if you say, hey, could we sit down and look at what your different personas, consumer journeys, or customer journeys are? And once you take it from there, I think that opens up all kinds of great ways to engage with what kind of data, what are we doing with that data, what are the boundaries of the data, what kind of vulnerabilities are we opening up to by connecting to this agency or that agency. I think that's a great starting point.
And now, of course, I have to think about consumers, even in these specific scenarios where you guys are. Let's play this little game whereby you are the consumers of the content that we're pushing you right now, right?
Personalized content.
We're
very seamless,
personalized to you specifically. Yes. So my point here is that is actually an amazing opportunity to shine in your careers. Because this is a space that hasn't been explored enough based on my experience, at least on all the management committees that I have been part of, I've probably heard it maybe 2 or 3 times in my entire life that this has been done. And this is a great opportunity to shine. For one reason, security, if anything, is going to increase its value in the work of marketing exponentially over the next 10 years. And so you're building yourself a niche that is going to yield value for a very, very, very long time. We look at it from an investments perspective, and from an investment perspective, cybersecurity is one of the places to be for investment right now. And so looking at it from the perspective of the consumer of this piece of content, it's a great move from a career perspective as well. So. But it takes time, though.
But it's interesting what you were just saying about, let's say, cybersecurity being the kind of on the hype on investment, because still the data is on the hype of investors as well. So the data has been there for the kind of last 15 years in terms of investors. working on more data, AI, machine learning to understand better and cross the data across different databases. But now cybersecurity is there as well. So how do we, again, on an investor point of view, it's very interesting. How do investor and investment funds tomorrow have as well a responsibility when they invest into a company to make sure that in some way, and I mean, they're going to look at those two aspects. They may invest in cybersecurity, but they may think about the value of the data or the things that they're going to do, and they may invest on the data side, but tell, hey, listen, you need to be careful with that, and make sure that in your team, you're going to have those people doing that and that. So
it's a very good point, because as of, what was it, last month, that the Global Compact from the United Nations just added cybersecurity strict rules, let's say, or regulation, or suggestions, actually, because they can't really do regulations, but they added that to their Sustainable Development Goals.
Yep.
So it goes right in that direction. So
Yeah, and I think that it's just getting back to your idea around career move and positioning and learning, and just the interest of learning, you know, the connection between IT and tech and security and marketing. But I think beyond the safety and making sure everything is secure, there's something really exciting about being, you know, partnering with marketers as thought leaders of the organization, to not just say, how do we ensure that our marketers and our marketing is secure, but really to say, what are the best tools out there that I can bring to the business that I know are reliable, they're safe, they're secure, but they're also best in class. And they will leverage all the technologies that marketers really need to leverage, to understand, to build with, in order to continue to push the content they need to push out there.
I want to challenge you now.
Please do.
That requires a change in mindset. Let me expand on that.
Oh yeah.
The way that I have seen a lot of decision makers take the decision around security tools has always been around defense, has always been, which is, of course, it has to be like that. The only moment in which economical value propositions were discussed was at the end of the buying process, where a C-level executive would come in and you really have to talk about value proposition. So for those ideas to truly emerge, we would have to bring the value proposition discussion from an economic perspective in the first meeting with a vendor, from let's say, a developer, from a security, not even officer, but maybe middle management. See what I mean? And I agree with you that that would be the kind of the holy grail, because whether we like it or not, sales and without, you can buy everything else in a company. You can outsource everything else, but there is one thing that you cannot outsource: sales. And it's money trumps religion. It's as simple as that, because if your sales department doesn't work, you close in 3 months. If you have a security risk and nobody finds out, chances are you have 7 months. You see what I'm saying? And so, money first.
yeah, but on the other side, and this is where it's interesting in terms of the positioning and the CMO, if you think about the market, the way it has driven, you need global brands, and Apple, basically, this is what they did in the last few years. They clearly position at the highest level as privacy being the #1 thing. And they communicated that all over the world. And they pushed actually then after. If you look at the different update on OS, on mobile OS, you would have seen that when Apple started to push some kind of cookies, third-party cookies blocks and so on, third-party advertising cookie blocked, the market was crazy. And certainly the CMOs and certain companies were crazy. But then it pushed Google to do so. So then if you think about the OS, the Android OS, they have moved toward the same, let's say, level of preventing and protecting users. So when you have such drivers, and it's coming again from a strategic point of view, then suddenly it fills into the company.
Well, I think one of the highlights, and I'm certainly not speaking on their behalf, so I'll give, you know, opinion of one, but if you look at Facebook Meta's recent WhatsApp ad, now I don't know if they are in Canada or in France, but certainly in the US, right, their recent ads are all about encryption, encrypted messaging. this is a very, very different message than what that company was pushing forward even a year ago. Not to say security, and again, I'm not speaking on their behalf, not to say security wasn't part of it, it absolutely was, but from an advertising standpoint, to make that a critical advertising component brings to life how important it has become, you know, across the board for consumers, for brands. So I think you're right, there is a clear move into even the big platforms to make that a selling point.
Yeah, and it will move then to the rest of the companies, because this is the way the behavior again has to be tomorrow, when those big players, what we call the GAFAM, you know, are moving into such mood in terms of one, pushing data and putting data as the heart of their privacy and protection as the heart of their strategy, then suddenly their client, they need to do so. And suddenly the CMO of their client need as well to align with that. Otherwise, you're not doing, because those guys, and they, in some way, they do the market. And so therefore, the advertisers are going to have to move into the same direction, because they're going to have to be on those mobile phones, on those platforms which are now more and more restricting access to some data.
When you were talking about meta, you made me think, what is the meta reason that brought us all together? Now security is part of the messaging. I mean, are you kidding me right now? Our messages from a marketing perspective were a lot more carnal. We were talking about going out on a date. Now we're talking about encryption. I am not getting this. Anyway, this is the direction we're taking. Let's roll with it. How did we get there? I think this started happening in the moment where product, services, and marketing started becoming the same thing. You see what I'm saying? Right now, there is not product without the marketing that's in it, or without the customer service that supports it. Everything is a unique experience. And so now these new things are actually popping up, whereby I personally find it extremely interesting, and I am thinking of a wish list that at some point I'm going to have to ask you to help me put together for my company.
And so therefore, before we go to some questions, I would like, what should be, let's say we have a room of audiences.
Are we done already with this?
No, that means we could stand for about 3 to 4 hours. That means this is okay.
That's what I was expecting.
But now we need to go. You know, we need to conclude. So I would like from you, what could be the kind of top 5 for the room? If people, the CISOs, let's say the RSSI, they need to move out from this conference and this room, what should be the kind of?
Can I say the first one that came to my mind? So the first one would be, put a meeting in your grab your phones. Grab your phones right now. Put a meeting in your calendar that you're going to talk to your CMO, for that CMO to assign to you a deputy for security on the marketing team. And those two have to agree on a training program for both roles, for both sides of the house. That would be, because knowledge will cut through digital transformation like a whole knife, a hot knife in butter, I think. So that would be my suggestion number 1.
Yeah. Alice?
I think that mine would be, and it probably ties closely, but it's all about people in the end, right? And so find these intersections where, before going into your CMO and asking the tough questions, which will need to happen eventually, find the intersections. Who on your team can drive value to the marketers, bring a new technology to them, something you've heard of, something that's fantastic. So I would say open the door with a value-added proposition, not to say that cyber is not a value added, but open it to give them value in their day-to-day challenges.
To be the ones to propose,
to
perhaps.
propose, exactly. Okay, to bring something that contributes. Because now, I think that hopefully after our chat, you have clarity that, marketers are still struggling with data. They're still struggling with technology. You have all that knowledge. Bring it to them in a value added to then open up the bigger conversation. So that's where I would start in that phone call.
And I would say as well, don't be afraid to move to cybersecurity is a key pillar and could be an asset in front of your clients. So basically, this is a different mindset. You're not talking only about the product you're selling, but it becomes, and cybersecurity becomes a product. So basically, the security of your clients become a product. And maybe it's a business client. It's the same story. You know, you're talking to consumers, but you're talking as well on the B2B side. You need to reassure that your product that you're selling, and there are a lot of rooms here, and we're talking about that, is going to be the one that your provider in front of you is going to say, okay, I trust this guy, and I'm going to work with him, and vice versa. So I'm trusting, I'm going to share things with him, and I trust because this security is part of a, let's say, baseline of the communication, of the product, and the vision.
Another one that I was thinking about right now is to, marketers are terrible at following rules. Terrible. And so the best way I could think of, let's say, directing that relationship would be also to create some rules of engagement that makes us understand what truly are the steps that we need to follow. In an ideal world, I would like to have a development environment that it's all-encompassing of everything, that has the development environment that could be, I don't know, state set, the security environment that could be strong network. You see what I'm saying? It's ideal. In an ideal world, I would like to have an environment where we could collaborate and produce one app after the other. Use, you know, something, the GraphQL all together. Let's use GraphQL all together.
And suddenly you have cybersecurity by design.
Yeah.
We have talked about privacy by design in the last 3 years. Now let's move to this new world of cybersecurity by design. And this has to be part of your strategy.
I would say just make sure you have the clarity on digital transformation. Be a part of that discussion, of that narrative. Where are we bringing our digital play? What are we transforming? For what purpose? And what's marketing's role in that transformation, and what's your role? And cement that collaboration based on these critical pillars of the transformation.
To your point specifically, there is a massive request, a suggestion request that I'm also thinking. Security people and IT people are a lot better at creating frameworks and formats to follow even in the analysis of an idea. And so it would be great also if we could have a pre-meeting document that you know, before a decision is made, that it's built by the security team to help the marketer think, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? What's the problem stopping you? Because as a marketer, I don't even know what the questions that you're struggling with are. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so without that initial framework, which is almost like a piece of paper where I can literally write things down and brainstorm, that you do it for a month, you do it for 2 months, you do it for 3 months. Where I am coming with this, in customer service, critical incidents analysis is normally done by asking very basic questions to get to the source of the problem instead of to the symptom of a problem. And so to create a little framework like that a marketer can use to fill it in, I think if you do it over a period of 3 months, there will be immediate understanding. You see what I'm saying?
I'll wrap it up with a bigger challenge.
I think
No,
we
we
need.
have to wrap it up, but I
we
will
have to wrap
dare
it up.
challenge you to wrap this up. So,
There may
yes.
There may be question in the room.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, but.
Yes, and.
If any question, I don't know.
It looks like you can carry on. Come
Okay.
on.
So, yes, I think the framework is an excellent idea. I think there's a bigger business play out there for the whole organization.
Uh-huh.
And if you think about the businesses that have been really successful, right? The ones that we go to, the Uber, Spotify, what was at the heart of that success? It was in many ways, I mean, there's more to it, but part of it was the interplay between data and creativity.
Oh, very true.
And so I
Very
think
true.
that framework, yes, but there's a much bigger play out there for this group to own in collaboration, in partnership, and I would challenge that's...
You closed it with an atomic bomb here.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Federico and Alice.